What is Ramachandra's brother's name? Starts with an L. Ramachandra's brother. They went to the forest with Sita and Ram and Lakshman. Lakshmana. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Madhava Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Radhe. Gopi Jana Balaba Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Radhe. Jasodanandana Brajasanarandana Jasodanandana Brajasanarandana Jamanatira Vanam Chadi Jamanati Ravanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Radhe Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Radhe Balabha Girivara Radhe Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamanatira Bhanam Chadi Jamanatira Bhanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Okay. We had some discussion this afternoon. One of the persons attending wanted to know, well, there's a question. When you have conflicting duties, how do you decide? And the reference that we gave was in Mahabharata, there was a discussion between the Yaksha and Yudhishthir, where several questions were asked, 35 questions, something like that. And after getting an A in his exam, giving the right answers, then the Yaksha disclosed that actually he was his father, Yamaraj, in disguise of a Yaksha, who previous to that was in disguise of a crane. And he was testing him to see if he understood the principles of Dharma. And he passed. So then the question came, so in one of those questions was basically when you have conflicting instructions or duties, how you should decide. It happens. And so, where is it? Didn't come out color. There's a verse, one of the verses from Mahabharata, Vanaparva, text 117. Tarko pratishta shrutayo vibhina nasavrishir yasya batam nabinam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhaya mahajino yendikatasa panta. Prabhupada referred to this verse many times. And the verse is quoted in its fullness in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami, where he's referring to this verse. The main phrase is the last line, Mahajano Yena Katasa Panta. You follow the examples set by the previous Mahajans, the great souls. Dharmasya tattvam nihitam Gohaya. Gohaya means hidden or confidential. The understanding is hidden in the hearts of those great souls. So what they do and the understandings they impart, that's what you follow. When you're uncertain, follow them. Here's the translation. Dry arguments are inconclusive. Tarka apratishta. Tarka is logic and argument. Tarka apratishta. Shruteo vibhina. Great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Nor na yasya matam nabinam dharma shatatvam. Okay, simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of unadulterated, self-realized persons. Consequently, the Shastras confirm one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans advocate. That's the translation Prabhupada has given in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And should I read the whole thing? It's a little long, because we have a whole chapter to read this evening. Well, the situation, I won't read it all, it's too long. But this is available if you like a copy. It's direct from. So Damodar has This is a shorter version, and then there's what's the of the 35 something questions. There's another section. So ask him for both from Krishna Dharma. And if the English is readable, I also sent him the Ganguly translation, and the English is not so readable. Thee and thine and goeth and all those things. So he has it all. But I'll give a summary of some of the things that. So the situation is the 5 brothers were thirsty. One by one, they went to the lake. There was a voice. It was a crane in a branch of a tree saying, don't take water from the lake, otherwise you'll die. And they didn't pay attention. They took water from the lake, and they became, there was sign of life, but they weren't, the color was still there, but they looked as if dead, that kind of thing. And then Yudhishthira came on the scene and saw what he saw, and there was his 4 brothers and Arjun's arrows and bow, and what's going on here? It doesn't see there was any scuffle and what happened. And so he then concludes it's something to do with the lake. So he decides to immerse himself in the lake. He hears the voice. Who are you? It was a crane. I'm a crane. I live on the entities, the fish and things from the lake. But you can't enter the lake because it belongs to me. So Yudhishthira says, I don't want to take something that belongs to you. He said, but you may enter the lake, but first you have to answer my questions. No problem. He transforms himself into a yaksha, from a crane. It gives this description of it, the form of the yaksha, kind of scary looking form, and starts asking questions. What makes the soul rise out of his entanglement in matter? Who keeps him company? Who is his guide in that spiritual journey? And on what is he established? That was the first question that's listed here. It is knowledge of the Supreme Lord that makes the soul rise. Godly qualities are his companions. Dharma is his guide, and he is established on truth. What makes one learned? How does one attain to that which is most exalted? How does one acquire a second self? And by what, O king, does one become wise? Answer, one becomes learned by studying the Vedas, by asceticism. One attains what is most exalted. Intelligence is like a second self, and serving one's elders makes one wise. And it goes on. The Yaksha then asked all kinds of subjects, and those all kinds of subjects are in this additional document. Then he says it ends with there's 4 questions. Answer my last 4 questions, and I will restore one of your brothers to life. Who in this world is happy? What is the most wonderful thing? Prabhupada would refer to that often. The most wonderful thing is everyone dies, and some people are still thinking, I'm not going to die. I'll be immortal. What are the tidings of this world? And how can one find the eternal path of religion? That's this Mahajano Yena Kata Sapanta, by following the Mahajans. He who is neither in debt nor exiled, and who lives simply, eating simple food in his own home, is happy. The most wonderful thing is that although every day innumerable creatures go to the abode of death, still a man thinks he is immortal. The tidings are that in this world, which is like a cauldron, with the sun as fire, days and nights as its fuel, and months and seasons as its wooden ladle, all creatures are being cooked by time. Okay. Then it goes on. So which one of your brothers do you want me to revive? He says Nakula. And the Yaksha says, what? What about Arjuna? What about Bhima? The answer, he who sacrifices virtue is himself destroyed, replied Yudhishthira, and he who preserves virtue is in turn preserved by it. It's like Dharma rakshata rakshataha, like that. One who protects Dharma is protected by Dharma. You protect virtue, you're protected by virtue. I'm therefore careful to always observe virtue. For me, great virtue lies in refraining from cruelty. It is superior to all worldly gain. Virtue. Thus I ask for Nakula. Both Kunti and Madri are the same to me. In myself, Kunti still has one son, but Madri now has none. With a desire to behave equally toward my two mothers, I ask for the life of Nakula. And he says, wow, that was really good. I'll revive all of them. Because you're such a virtuous person. Anyway, it goes on. So that was just a little review on the question that was asked in this midday class today. And the person who asked the question got a copy, and Damodar has digital copies for whoever wants one. Is there a way to send things out to the audience in general? Yes? Yeah? All right. So send him a little message to send it out, those two. So now we're chapter 11, Ram meets the monkeys. We just heard he visited the hermitage of sage Matanga. Before that, the encounter with Virada, Shabari and her her wonderful qualities, and she went to the spiritual world. And then Ram feels encouraged. I feel a change is about to take place. Good fortune is coming. High on a peak of the Rishamukh hill, Sugriva had heard Ram's cries. He was crying about separation from his father and loss of Sita and everything. He looked around and saw the two princes on the edge of the lake. He was immediately seized with fear. The two humans appeared like a couple of powerful gods. Sugriva wondered if they had been sent by his brother Bali, who bore him constant enmity. The prince's large bows and swords struck fear into Sugriva's heart. He ran back into his cave and said to his four companions, "Two mighty warriors disguised as ascetics have come here. Surely this is Vali's doing, dispatched by him with the purpose of seeking me out and killing me. Those two heroes will soon arrive here. What should I do?" The five great apes, who were all incarnations of the gods and who belonged to the celestial race of Vanaras, sat together and discussed. They decided to ascend a high peak and observe the warriors. Coming out from their cave, they leapt from crag to crag. As they bounded impetuously upward, they broke down large trees with their powerful arms. Tigers and leopards dashed away in fear, seeing the apes jumping about the side of the mountain. After reaching a high place, they came together and gazed down upon Lake Pampa. Sugriva's main advisor, Hanuman, who was a son of the wind god Vayu, then said, "What cause is there for concern, O Sugriva? Here are only two men. I do not see Vali, the actual source of your fear, nor can Vali ever come here because of Matanga's curse. Hanuman advised Sugriva to closely observe the warriors. From their movements and gestures, he would be able to ascertain their actual purpose. He should not give way to unnecessary fear. Perhaps the two men had come as friends. Sugriva was still not sure. He had experienced Vali's malicious anger on a number of occasions. He replied to Hanuman, "No trust can be placed in kings, O wise one. They will never rest until all their enemies are destroyed. I feel that these two warriors are Vali's emissaries. If they exhibit friendship, even if they exhibit friendship, we should be wary. Otherwise, having gained our trust, they will then fulfill my brother's wicked purpose." Sugriva told Hanuman to assume the form of a Brahmin and meet with the warriors. He should study them carefully and then report back. Hanuman, who accepted Sugriva as his king, bowed respectfully and left, leaping down to the base of the mountain. As a son of Vayu, he possessed great mystic power. He thus assumed a human form and, appearing as a wandering mendicant, approached Ram and Lakshman. Hanuman prostrated himself before the princes and inquired in respectful tones, "What brings you two shining ascetics to this region? You appear like a pair of royal sages, fit to rule the entire world. Your massive bows glow like rainbows. Your swords appear dreadful, and your arms are like the trunks of mighty elephants. Yet you are dressed as Brahmins. And why do you wail so despondently? Why do you search about this lake? Your presence here is a mystery. Although you are indeed welcome, you seem like the sun god and the moon god descended to earth, illuminating this large mountain by your own luster. Perhaps you are even powerful expansions of the Supreme Lord." The astute Hanuman closely examined the two brothers. He could understand they were not ordinary men. The monkey had a deep devotion for Vishnu, and as he looked at Ram, he felt his love being awakened. It seemed he had known this human all his life. Although he had never met him before, Hanuman thought carefully, surely this was the Lord incarnate. What profound purpose had brought him here? Hanuman decided to reveal his identity. So far, the others haven't spoken yet. It's important. Folding his palms, he told them he was Sugriva's minister. Sugriva was the king of the Vanaras, but he had been banished by his brother. He now sought the prince's friendship and was waiting high up upon the mountainside. The brothers relaxed and smiling. They had listened attentively to Hanuman. Ram had become cheerful upon hearing his words, and he said to Lakshman, he hasn't spoken specifically, he hasn't spoken to Hanuman yet. Hanuman's done all the talking, and now he's talking to Lakshman about Hanuman, in front of Hanuman. It's commentators. He's assessing his capacity to be the one, the guru, the one to reunite Sita. This meeting is fortunate indeed, dear brother. Here stands Sugriva's minister, who is the monkey we seek. My heart and mind are moved by the noble Vanara's speech. Surely he has studied every facet of Sanskrit grammar, for his words were faultless and delivered in a gentle and high poetic style. Even an enemy with upraised sword would be made friendly by such speech. Ram asked his brother to reply to Hanuman. He has an intermediary. Lakshman then informed the monkey that they had heard about Sugriva and wished to meet with him in friendship. Hanuman smiled. Realizing that the two godlike brothers were seeking his master's assistance, he felt that Sugriva's kingdom was already recovered. The monkey joyfully spoke again. Pray tell, what is your purpose in having come to this lonely forest region in the first place? By gestures, Ram urged Lakshman to explain everything to Hanuman. Lakshman told him in brief all that had happened to Ram from the point of being exiled. This is There's retelling of Ramayana within Ramayana so many times. This is one of them. The narration of Ram's many misfortunes distressed Lakshmana, and he spoke with tears streaming from his eyes, describing how Kabandha had directed them to find Sugriva. The prince concluded, "This Ram, whose father Dasarath was daily honored by all kings of earth, and who himself possesses limitless virtues, now seeks the refuge of Sugriva, the lord of the monkeys." When the prince stopped speaking, Hanuman stood with folded palms. He looked at Ram and said, "Fortunate indeed is Sugriva that you have sought him as an ally. He too is fully afflicted by grief, having lost his home and family at the hands of his powerful brother. He now lives in fear on this high mountain. Come, I shall take you to him." Ram and Lakshman looked at each other joyfully. Hanuman then assumed his form as a monkey and, kneeling, told the princess to mount his shoulders. Then the powerful ape, I don't like that, monkey, Vanara, leaped up the mountainside, carrying both Ram and Lakshman with ease. Within a few minutes, Hanuman reached Sugriva. Setting the brothers down, he introduced them to the monkey chief. He told Sugriva all that Lakshman had said about their exile and search for Sita. Hanuman praised the princes highly and recommended to Sugriva that he accept their preferred friendship. That's another. Sugriva is getting the mercy of a devotee, so he can become a devotee. Sugriva looked at the two brothers, his mind awed by their brilliance and obvious power. Like Hanuman, he felt a strong love and devotion awakening in his heart. He stood up and spoke to Ram. "I am highly honored that you have sought my alliance, O Ram. Your righteousness, your virtues, and your kindness to all beings is well known. It is my gain only that you have arrived here today, O noble one. If my friendship is acceptable to you, then please take my hand. Let us enter into an abiding pact." Sugriva extended his hand to Ram, who clasped it firmly in his own. Ram vigorously embraced the monkey, and they both felt great happiness. Hanuman then lit a fire and sanctified it with Vedic mantras. Ram and Sugriva sat by the fire and swore their alliance together. They went clockwise around the fire, hand in hand. As they gazed happily at each other, Sugriva said, "May our friendship last forever. Our woes and joys are now one." Hanuman broke off a large bough from a flowering sal tree and set it on the ground as a seat for Ram and Sugriva. He broke off another from a blossoming sandalwood tree and offered it to Lakshman. Now there's another in the Valmiki Ramayana. There's a difference. It's an important difference. Sugriva did for Ram, but neglected Lakshman. And Hanuman understood the mistake, so he took care of it. But it was, neglecting one who is dear to Ram is not good. And it comes up later. When they were all seated, Sugriva began telling Ram about himself. "I've been banished and antagonized by my elder brother Vali, O Ram, and I move about these woods in great fear. He has stolen my wife and wrestled the kingdom from me. Even now he seeks to destroy me. Please grant me security from my hostile brother." Ram laughed heartily and replied, "Certainly, service is the fruit of friendship. Service is the fruit of friendship." It can work the other way too. Friendship is established through service. You need have no fear from Vali. That immoral monkey will soon lie dead, killed by my infallible arrow. You will see Vali struck down and lying on the earth like a shattered mountain. Sugriva was reassured. He was certain he would soon recover his wife and kingdom. He again clasped Ram's hand and thanked him. Sugriva assured Ram that he would search out and find Sita wherever, whether she was in the bowels of the earth or in the vaults of heaven. "You should know for sure," he said, "that neither God nor demon can hold Sita any more than a man can digest poison food." Even as that friendship between Ram and Vali Should be Ram and Sugriva, right? Even as that friendship between Ram and Vali was forged, Ram and Sugriva was forged, the left eye of Sita, Vali, and Ravan all throbbed violently and simultaneously, foreboding good to the princes and evil to the other two. Princess. After the brothers and the monkeys had eaten a meal of cooked roots and forest vegetables prepared by Hanuman, they again spoke together. Sugriva told Ram that he had seen not long ago a great Rakshasa flying overhead, clutching a crying lady. He had heard her plaintive calls, Ram, Lakshman. This must surely have been Sita being stolen by Ravan. Sugriva continued, I saw the princess wriggling like a snake in the demon's grasp. She spotted me sitting with my 4 companions on the mountain top. She then threw down her jewels wrapped in a cloth. Ram grasped the monkey's arm. You saw my beloved Sita. Where are those jewels? Bring them quickly. Sugriva got up and entered deeply into his cave. After a few minutes, he returned holding the cloth bundle Sita had thrown. He laid it out before Ram, and the brilliant jewels shone in the bright sunshine. Ram dropped to his knees and began sobbing, Sita, my darling. He pressed the jewels to his bosom. Thinking of his kidnapped wife, he began to hiss like a serpent provoked in its hole. He turned to Lakshman, who had knelt by his side. See here, Lakshman, Sita's bright jewels. The Rakshasa must have carried her this way. Lakshman gazed at the jewels and replied to Ram, I do not recognize the armlets or earrings, for I have never looked at the face or body of the princess, but I recognize the anklets, which I saw each day as I bowed at her feet. So that's the place where we find Lakshman saying like that. Ram quickly stood up and spoke to Sugriva. Tell me where the demon has taken Sita. Where does he dwell, O Sugriva? On account of that demon, I shall exterminate the entire Rakshasa horde. By carrying off Sita, he has opened wide the portals of death. Let me know the whereabouts, and I shall dispatch him to death's presence this very day, accompanied by all his followers. Sugriva's head fell. He told Ram that he had no knowledge of Ravana's whereabouts. The city of the Rakshasa was unknown to the monkeys, as it was to humans. Perhaps it even lay in some other planet, for the Rakshasas could move freely anywhere. But Sugriva solemnly swore that he would find Sita. Ram should not lament. Whatever it took to locate the princess, Sugriva and his monkeys would undertake. Sugriva reassured Ram, do not allow grief to overpower you, O great hero. Wise men face every calamity with fortitude and do not yield to sorrow. This is like 50 times already. Because there's lots of sorrow, and don't yield to sorrow. Stay with virtue and fortitude and duty. And it's an important lesson because it's repeated. Wise men faced every calamity with fortitude and did not yield to sorrow. Only the foolish are overcome by lamentation, losing their intelligence and strength and sinking like an overturned boat. O Ram, I am here to help you. Cast away your grief. Ram wiped his face with his cloth and smiled at Sugriva. He felt comforted by the monkey's words and thanked him for his counsel. He urged Sugriva to begin the search for Sita immediately, and he again promised to kill Vali. Sugriva and his ministers felt immense pleasure to hear Ram's promise, and they considered their purpose accomplished. Sugriva vowed his unending and unswerving friendship to serve Ram, who then asked, tell me how you came to be exiled, dear friend. Why do you tarry here on this lonely mountain, suffering grief and fear? Sugriva then told Ram his story. Although I had ascended the throne of the monkeys under the instruction of Vali's ministers, I was deposed and chased away violently by Vali. Even my dear wife was stolen by my powerful brother. Still he antagonizes me. Many times I have killed monkeys sent by him for my destruction. Thus it was that I feared even you when I first saw you arrive here. Ram wanted to hear all the details about Vali. He asked Sugriva to relate the whole history. What were Vali's strengths and weaknesses? Why had he insulted Sugriva? Ram was already feeling anger towards Vali. He wanted to know everything about the arrogant monkey. Then he would take the necessary steps. He again reassured Sugriva, "Speak with confidence. Soon you will see my arrow streak towards Vali's chest and him falling like a cleft mountain." Sugriva, feeling delight, said, "Vali and I are two sons of Riksharaj, the king of the monkeys. My father and I always held Vali in the highest esteem. When the king died, it was Vali, the elder prince, who was duly installed as ruler. I always remained subservient to my brother, standing by his side." Sugriva described how one day a demon named, what's the demon that came? Starts with an M. Mayavi. One day, a demon named Mayavi had come to Kishkinda, the monkey's city. He had a dispute with Vali over a woman, and he stood outside the city gates, bellowing fearfully and challenging Vali to a duel. Vali was sleeping, and Mayavi's roar woke him up. He got up furiously and immediately rushed out to the city with Sugriva by his side. When Mayavi saw the two huge monkeys emerging from the city, he became fearful and ran away. Vali and Sugriva gave chase and were gaining on the demon when he suddenly entered a large hole in the earth. Upon reaching the hole, Vali decided to go after Mayavi, and he told Sugriva to wait for him. Although Sugriva implored his brother to take him, Vali went alone into the hole. He bound Sugriva on oath to remain at the entrance of the hole until he returned. A year passed, and Sugriva waited. He must have gotten hungry. And Sugriva waited. There was no sign of Vali. Sugriva began to fear his brother had been killed. He stayed at the hole, feeling misgivings. Then, as he sat watching the hole, a large amount of foaming blood began to seep out. Sugriva also heard a roaring sound of the demon, but he could not hear his brother's voice. Thinking carefully, Sugriva concluded with a great sorrow that Vali must have been killed. Not wanting the demon to escape, Sugriva placed an enormous boulder over the hole. He then returned, grieving, to Kishkinda. Even though we've heard this like so many times, it's still nice. You enjoying the story? Yeah? There's a battle scene coming up too. Boys like battle scenes. It's real intense. We'll get there quickly. Vali's ministers then installed Sugriva on the throne, although he was reluctant to accept it. However, after only a short time lapsed, Vali returned, having killed the demon. When he saw Sugriva on the throne, he became enraged. He bound the ministers in chains and spoke harshly to Sugriva, explaining that he had found Mayavi after a full year of searching and had slain him and all his kinsmen. Then he turned back, only to find the entrance to the hole blocked and Sugriva gone. Sugriva was full of reverence toward his brother and bowed before him, touching his feet with a crown. He told Vali how pleased and relieved he was to see him returned. Sugriva would again happily become his brother's servant, but Vali would not be placated. He accused Sugriva of deliberately shutting him up in the hole out of a desire to gain the kingdom. He threw Sugriva out of the city with only a single cloth wrapped around him. Vali also stole his brother's wife. Sugriva concluded his story. Thus it was that I came to be wandering about, accompanied by only a few close friends and advisors. Ranging the earth in fear of Vali, I finally sought shelter upon this mountain, knowing that he cannot come here due to a curse. Then comes the curse story. Here we go. Ram smiled at Sugriva. Once more, he gave him every assurance that the cruel and immoral Vali would soon be punished. I will soon dispel your grief at losing your wife, O king of the monkeys, even as the sun dispels a morning mist. Sugriva looked at Ram with his powerful frame and huge bow. He was truly an impressive sight. Surely he could easily overpower even the mightiest of warriors, but Vali was no ordinary opponent. Although raised by Riksharaj, Vali had been born the son of Indra. He possessed strength beyond compare. No one could face him in battle. Therefore, Sugriva felt uncertain. He began to describe Vali's prowess every day. Upon rising, Vali, for exercise, strides from the western to the eastern ocean. He then moves to the southern shore and again bounds up to the northernmost coast. He knows no fatigue and climbs to the tops of mountains, hurling down their huge peaks with his bare hands. I've seen Vali snap numerous massive trees as if they were small sticks. Sugriva then told Rama about Vali's encounter with another celestial demon named, starts with a D, Dundubi. 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 This demon was accustomed to roam about in the form of a terrible-looking buffalo. He possessed the strength of 10,000 elephants and was wandering around looking for a suitable opponent. Coming to the god of the seas, the demon challenged him to battle, but the god declined, saying, I'm not competent to fight with you. The deity sent Dundubi to the Himavan mountain, telling him that he would get battle there. But the mountain also declined to fight Dundubi. The demon roared angrily and demanded to know who could possibly face him. Himavan then said Vali would prove a worthy combatant for him, and he directed Dundubi to Kishkinda. The furious demon, still in the form of a tremendous buffalo, rushed towards Vali's city. He appeared like a black cloud racing through the skies in the rainy season. Dundubi arrived at the gates of Kishkinda and thundered like a large drum being violently beaten. That sound reverberated for miles, and it broke down the surrounding trees. Vali was enjoying with his wives in his palace, drunk with wine and passion. He stood up and gazed about with reddish eyes. He was intolerant by nature, and the sound of the demon maddened him. He ran out of his palace, followed by his wives. Going before Dundubi, he said, Why do you bellow like this, O demon? If you are challenging me, then you had best flee immediately before I take your life. The demon laughed loudly. He said to Vali, You should not challenge me in the presence of ladies, O gallant monkey. Fight with all your power, and I shall kill you today. Or, if you prefer, you may remain for this night with your wives, and we shall fight tomorrow. It is improper to fight one who is drunk or blinded by passion. Return to your city and gaze upon it for one last time. Say fond farewell to your near and dear ones. Install your son upon the throne, and then come out for battle. Soon you will lie dead upon the earth. Vali laughed to hear this arrogant boasting. He sent his wives back into the city and said to Dundubi, Do not make excuses to hide your fear. Take my inebriety to be the drunkenness of a warrior just prior to a battle. We shall fight now. Vali tightened his cloth and stood like a mountain in front of Dundubi. The demon roared and lowered his pointed horns, charging furiously at Vali. The monkey at once seized Dundubi by his horns and swung him around, throwing him down on the ground. Blood flowed from the demon's ears, and he got up and charged again. Rising up on his hind legs, he began pounding Vali with his hooves, making a sound like thunderclaps. He thrust his horns into Vali's body, but the monkey stood firm. The battle raged on for some time as the two opponents beat each other furiously. Vali struck the demon with fists, knees, feet, rocks, and trees. Gradually, he overpowered Dundubi, who became exhausted. Vali then took hold of his horns and dashed him to the ground with great force. He whirled the lifeless demon around and tossed him to a distance of 8 miles. As he flew through the air, large amounts of blood flowed from his smashed body. Some drops fell on the hermitage of the sage Matanga. The rishi stood up in a rage and looked around. He saw Dundubi's carcass, and by his mystic vision he could understand that Vali had thrown the dead demon there. He immediately uttered a curse. If the monkey who threw this corpse ever steps within 4-mile radius of this hermitage, he will immediately turn to stone. Thus, Sugriva explained, why Vali did not dare come near Rishamukh. He pointed out He pointed to what appeared to be a massive heap of shining white rocks. Here are Dundubi's bones, tossed away by Vali. Even these bare bones can hardly be moved by any other person. Lakshman laughed contemptuously. What feat have you seen that Ram cannot equal? O Sugriva, I have not heard anything yet to indicate that this brother of yours is formidable. Sugriva assured Lakshmana that he was convinced of Ram's prowess, but he had not yet seen any demonstration of Ram's power, while on many occasions he had witnessed the power of Vali. He asked Ram to show him his strength by kicking away Dundubi's skeleton. Ram laughed again, and with his foot he playfully lifted the huge bones, flicking them high in the air. The skeleton flew out of sight, landing some 80 miles away. Seeing the bones vanishing into the distance, Sugriva was impressed. But he still remained doubtful. He said to Ram, you have thrown the dried up bones of Dundubi, but he was hurled by Vali when he still had a carcass full of flesh and blood. Oh, Ram, forgive me. But is there one other test I should like to witness? Sugriva showed Ram and Lakshman 7 sal trees, each more than 30 arms length in diameter. In the past, Vali had easily broken down many such trees. Sugriva asked Ram to show his strength by piercing one of those trees right through with an arrow, 30 arms length in diameter. Ram smiled, took up his bow, and strung it. Placing on the string a dreadful-looking arrow, he took aim and released the arrow, which passed cleanly through all 7 trees. The arrow, gilded with gold, entered the earth, descended to the subterranean regions, forcing its way back up, and out of the earth it again entered Ram's quiver. Sugriva was astonished and fell flat on the ground at Ram's feet. He considered Vali as good as slain. Kneeling before Ram, he said, you could kill with your arrows the gods and demons combined. Who can stand before you in battle? With you as my ally, my grief has totally dried up. Oh, Ram, let us go quickly and make short work of Vali. Ram agreed, and they all left immediately for Kishkinda. Ram told Sugriva to go ahead and challenge Vali to fight, and he would wait nearby. When Vali came out of the city, Ram would kill him. Sugriva stood outside Kishkinda, began to roar. Vali heard his brother and rushed out to fight. The 2 monkeys began a tumultuous, terrible combat that resembled the clash between Mars and Mercury in the heavens. Blinded by anger, they threw blows like thunderbolts at each other, striking with their fists, palms, and feet. They pummeled each other, screaming with fury. Ram watched closely, bow in hand. He could not distinguish who was who. The 2 monkey brothers resembled each other so closely, like the twin Ashwini gods. Ram did not therefore release his arrow for fear of hitting Sugriva. Vali got the upper hand, and the battered Sugriva ran for his life. He dashed back to Rishamukh, closely followed by Vali, who stopped at the edge of the forest near to Matunga's hermitage, saying, today you are spared. Sugriva lay gasping on the ground as Ram ran up to him. The monkey looked at the prince in surprise. Why did you not say truthfully that you had no intention of slaying Vali? Look at me now. I've been half killed by that fearful ape. Oh, Ram, had I known you were reluctant, I would not have moved from this place. Ram consoled Sugriva, explaining that he was unable to distinguish the monkey from his brother. Their features, dress, and ornaments were too similar. He suggested that Sugriva again challenge Vali, but this time wearing some distinctive mark, so that Ram could tell one from the other. Lakshman tied round Sugriva's neck a flowing creeper. Reassured, Sugriva got up and left again for Kishkinda. I mean, there's some details. The detail was to receive the garland he had to bow before Lakshman. Because how can you be victorious without offering respect to Lakshman? Even with Ram as the bowman. There's all these kinds of lessons our acharyas describe. And one of the things that I still don't understand is it's the garland is just a creeper, like some vines. And when these two powerful fighters are fighting, the vine's going to get ripped off. So how is he going to distinguish one from the other from that simple thing? I don't have an answer to that one. Okay, so Lakshman and Sugriva strode in front, followed by Ram, Hanuman, and the other three monkeys. They soon reached the city, and again Sugriva went to the gates. He looked at Ram, still feeling fearful. The beating from Bali had shaken him. Ram saw Sugriva's anxious expression. He took the monkey by his shoulders and said, "Do not hesitate. Bali will presently roll in the dust, struck down by my arrow. I have never uttered a falsehood, even though I have been in adversity for a long time. Let go of your mighty shout. Let go your mighty shout, O Sugriva, and Bali will quickly proceed to the spot. How can he brook a challenge in the presence of women?" Neglect, I guess it means. This shall be his last battle, indeed his last day on earth. Sugriva accepted Ram's firm assurance that when the two princes remained concealed in a clump of bushes, he again began to shout out his challenge. His roar rent the air piteously. Animals fled confused in all directions like women assailed by wicked men due to the failure of leaders to protect them. Birds dropped from the sky like gods whose pious merits have been exhausted. As Sugriva emitted his fierce cry, he sounded like the ocean, lashed by a gale. Bali was in his inward chambers with his wives. Hearing Sugriva's challenge, he sat up in surprise. How could his brother return so soon? Was he not satisfied with one thrashing? This time, there would be no escape for that arrogant monkey. Bali was seized with fury. His limbs trembled, and as his eyes turned crimson, grinding his teeth, he leapt up from bed and ran toward the door. His wife Tara, seeing him about to go out, ran to him and held his arm. Her womanly intuition told her something was wrong. She spoke fearfully. "My lord, shake off this anger. Do not enter into another combat with Sugriva. Although you are more powerful than your brother, I nevertheless feel misgivings. How has Sugriva become so fearless? Even though he was only just beaten by you. Why does he now stand there roaring like a monsoon cloud? Surely he has found a powerful ally." Bali stopped and looked at his beautiful wife. She told him that she had heard how Sugriva had formed a friendship with two princes from Ayodhya. Tara described the power and glory of Ram, which she heard described by Angada, Bali's son. Ram was unassailable in battle and capable of crushing vast armies. He was the supreme resort of the afflicted and had given an assurance of safety to Sugriva. The Vanara queen begged her husband not to go out and fight. Indeed, he should welcome Sugriva and install him as the prince regent. Tara implored her husband, "I consider Sugriva to be your foremost friend. You need not maintain this animosity. Bring him close with gifts and kind words. Along with Ram, he will prove your greatest ally, O valiant monarch. Please, do not enter another combat with Sugriva, for I fear it will be your last." Gripped by death, Bali could not accept his wife's advice. He reproached her as she stood before him weeping. "How can I tolerate this insolence from a warrior who has never known defeat? Brooking, this neglecting, an insult is worse than death. I'm not able to stand that arrogance of the weak Sugriva, much less his roar, O timid one. I shall not tarry here any longer. Sugriva shall meet his death today. Vali told Tara she need not fear of Ram's account. He knew about the human prince. Ram was devoted to virtue and piety. He would never commit the sin of killing an innocent person, nor could he intervene in the fair fight of others. Vali ordered Tara to stay in the palace. He was going out to face Sugriva and would soon return, having either killed his brother or sent him flying in fear. The queen bowed her head and prayed for her husband, returning sorrowfully to her rooms. Filled with rage and breathing heavily, Vali rushed out of the city gates. He saw Sugriva standing firm like a mountain, his reddish-brown body glowing like fire. Vali tightened his loincloth. Raising his fist, he charged furiously at his brother, shouting, "This iron-like fist, hurled at you like a mace, will return after taking your life." Remembering his brother's treatment of him, Sugriva also worked up with anger. He threw a great punch at the onrushing Vali. The two monkeys clashed together, roaring like maddened bulls, struck a swinging blow on the chest by Vali's two clenched hands. Sugriva vomited blood and looked like a mountain covered with a cascade of red oxides. He tore up a sal tree and dashed his brother over the head. Vali shook like a ship tossed in the ocean. He fell upon Sugriva and began pounding him with his knees and fists. The two monkeys fought fiercely, and gradually Vali once more gained the upper hand. Sugriva, with his vanity shattered, began fearfully looking about for Ram. He was becoming weaker and weaker. From behind the bush, Ram saw his chance. Vali stood up over the collapsed brother, his arms upraised. Ram swiftly placed an arrow on his bow, releasing it, and with a sound resembling a crash of thunder, the arrow sped like a streak of lightning and hit Vali in the breast, sounding like another thunderclap. Vali fell to the ground like a hewn tree, uttering a great cry. He lay unconscious with his body bathed in blood. Although struck by Ram's powerful arrow, the monkey did not die, for he was wearing a gold chain Indra had given him. By Indra's blessing, that chain was capable of preserving the life of whoever wore it. Lying there with his scattered garments and shining ornaments, the glowing arrow of Ram protruded from his chest. Vali looked like a colorful banner suddenly dropped to the ground. Ram and Lakshman slowly approached that mortally wounded monkey. Vali opened his eyes and looked up at Ram, who was smiling at him. The fallen monkey spoke with difficulty. "You are famous for your truth and virtue, O Ram. How have you committed such an abominable act? What was my crime that I should be punished in this way? I did not attack you. Indeed, I was engaged in fair combat with another. Why have you killed me, remaining concealed at a distance?" Vali accused Ram of irreligion, saying that he only posed as a virtuous person. This heinous deed surely proved him to be otherwise. He had lost control of his mind and senses, overcome by desire and swayed by sentiment. Out of friendship for Sugriva, he had abandoned righteousness. Gasping for breath, Vali went on, "I cannot understand why you have acted in this way, O Ram. What did you have to gain by killing me, a mere monkey, living in the forest on wild fruits? The scriptures condemn the eating of monkey flesh or of using their skins. There was no reason to slay me. I have done you no harm at all. Surely this act will be condemned by all holy men, and you will go to hell." He said a whole bunch of other things. Vali censured Ram at length, speaking passionately. After some time, he closed his eyes and fell back exhausted. He felt regret. Why did he not listen to Tara? She had tended him wise advice. By ignoring her, he had reaped the results of his impetuosity. The arrow in his chest burned like fire. Vali was shocked. How could the virtuous Ram have perpetrated such a vile deed? This is one of the sections that Nityananda Pran likes a lot. There was something like 11 different accusations, and one by one Ram refutes them. And one of the essential ones was it's the duty of a king to punish one who commits such a vile act. And if the king neglects with death one who cohabits with his brother's wife, it's condemned. And so it's the duty of the king, although I'm in the forest, I'm the son of Dasrath, it's the duty of the king to punish such persons. And if the kings don't do that, then they're culpable in the same way for the same act. So your death penalty was due to you. And he gives like a whole bunch of, that was a very important one. Let's hear. Ram waited for Vali to regain a little strength. When the monkey again opened his eyes, Ram said, "O Vali, you clearly do not understand righteousness and religion. The entire earth belongs to the descendants of Manu, having been bequeathed to them by that great deity and speaker of religious codes. Bharata now rules this world as we, his brothers, are his servants. Thus, it is our duty to roam the earth, promoting virtue and punishing the wicked. You, O proud monkey, are indeed wicked." Ram then explained to Vali the rules of morality. The younger brother should be regarded as one's own son, and his wife as the daughter-in-law. Vali had therefore been guilty of a great sin in punishing the sinless Sugriva and cohabiting with Ruma, Sugriva's wife. The scriptures prescribed death as the punishment for one who has illicit sexual relations with his own daughter or a wife of his younger brother. There was no doubt that Rama's punishing him was just. Ram continued to address the pain-stricken Vali. "You are now freed from the sinful action, which would have sent you to hell. A person punished by the king is released from all sins and ascends to heaven. But if the king fails to punish a sinner, then he himself incurs the sin. O Vali, you should not grieve, for you have been fortunate to receive the proper punishment, making you eligible for the higher planets after death. Nor did I act wrongly by remaining concealed. Since you are a monkey, this was the appropriate way to kill you, just as when hunting the king shoots arrows at animals while hiding from view, so I shot you." Vali could not argue. He had always felt remorseful for the way he had treated Sugriva, but he had denied those feelings, remaining fiercely antagonistic toward his brother. Now he had finally received the result. All creatures had to accept the fruits of their own acts alone. No suffering or happiness came other than the result of one's former acts. Understanding this, Vali accepted Ram's words as true and gave up his anger and grief. With difficulty he replied, "How can a dwarf argue with a giant? O Ram, you are the best knower of all religious principles. I am justly punished. Please forgive my harsh words spoken earlier out of sorrow and confusion. I have certainly strayed from the path of virtue." Vali feared that after his death, his brother Sugriva would be antagonistic towards his son Angada. He begged Ram to establish a friendship between the two monkeys. Ram assured Vali that Sugriva would rule the Vanaras with righteousness, treating Angada like a younger brother. Vali lost consciousness, his life all but ended. At that moment, Tara ran out of the city crying for her husband. She saw the monkeys, who were Vali's followers, running about in all directions, seized with fear of Ram. Tara stopped some of them and asked, why were they fleeing? "See there, your mighty husband struck down by Ram's arrow," they replied. "Death in the form of Ram is bearing him away. Leave quickly with us, for soon Sugriva will take over the city and drive us out, assisted by Ram's deadly arrows." Tara looked around and saw Vali lying on the ground. Nearby, Ram leaned on his great bow. With a wail, she ran towards her fallen husband. Beating her breast and head, she fell at Vali's feet. The lordly ape resembled a mountain struck down by Indra's thunderbolt. Crying out, "My lord!" she rolled about in agony. Angada also came there and dropped to the ground at his father's feet, overwhelmed with grief. Tara lamented loudly. "Get up, O tiger among monkeys. Why do you not greet me? Come with me now and lay upon your excellent couch. The bare ground is no place for a king to lay. Alas, it is obvious that the earth is more dear to you than myself, for you lie there embracing her with your outstretched arms. What shall I do? Where shall I go? I'm lost. Crying like a female osprey, the intelligent Tara thought how her husband had banished Sugriva and stolen his wife. Surely this was the fruit of those sinful deeds. How could she live now as a widow under the care of Sugriva, Vali's enemy? What would happen now to her dear son Angada? Tara held Vali's feet, who lay unconscious and was barely breathing. Hanuman gently comforted Tara. This is the sure end of everybody, O gentle lady. All of us shall reap the results of our own deeds, only good and bad. As such, we gain nothing and do nothing for others but lamenting. By lamenting, Vali has reached the end of his life and will now rise to the higher regions. Do not grieve. Tara cried out in pain. She had no desire to live without Vali. Lying next to her husband, she determined to fast until death, following the path taken by Vali. As Tara sobbed, Vali opened his eyes and looked slowly about. Seeing Sugriva, he spoke to him affectionately. "O brother, please forgive my evil acts against you. Destiny did not decree that we should share happiness together. Except now the rulership of the monkeys, I shall soon depart for Yamarash's abode." Vali asked his brother to be kind to Angada. He also asked that Sugriva carefully protect Tara, always seeking her advice on important matters. Ram's order should be closely followed, and Sugriva should always seek to please him. Sugriva, feeling despondent, nodded in assent to Vali's instructions. Vali then took off his celestial gold chain and gave it to Sugriva. Turning to Angada, he said in a whisper, "Dear son, I shall now depart from this world. Remain ever devoted to Sugriva's service, seeing him as you do myself." With his eyes rolling in pain and his teeth exposed, Vali gave up his life. His head fell to the side as his last breath gasped out. A great howl of sorrow went up from the many monkeys who stood surrounding Vali. "Alas, our Lord is gone. Who will protect us now? Who can equal Vali in strength and splendor?" Tara and Angada embraced Vali's body, wailing loudly. Sugriva was filled with remorse. He went before Ram and said, "I am a wretch who has caused the death of my own brother. Although he was always capable, my brother never killed me. But at the first opportunity I had him slain. How could I take the kingdom now, stained with the Vali's blood? How can I tolerate seeing Tara and Angada weeping bitterly on my account?" Sugriva became overwhelmed by his feelings. He felt sure he would reap the terrible results of the sin of fratricide, and indeed the killing of a king. Vali was noble and had ruled the monkeys with justice and compassion. Having killed him, Sugriva was not fit himself to become a monarch. Everyone would simply condemn him. His only recourse was to enter fire along with the body of his brother. Sugriva begged Ram's permission to give up his life. The other monkeys could assist Ram in finding Sita. Ram was moved to tears upon hearing Sugriva's piteous lamentations. As he considered the monkey's sorrowful words, Tara approached him and said, "O all-powerful one, I too shall enter the fire along with Vali. I have no desire for life without my husband. Surely he will miss me, even among the Apsaras in heaven, for I have always been his most devoted servant." Tara begged Ram to kill her with the very same arrow which he had slain Vali. "O Ram, the wife is always considered one with her husband. Therefore, you need not fear the sin of killing a woman. You will only be completing the task of killing Vali by taking my life. I cannot tolerate the pain of separation from my spouse. Surely you know only too well what that terrible pain is like." Ram looked compassionately at Tara, who had fallen on the ground. He consoled her most gently. "Oh, wife of a hero, do not think in this way. The entire creation yields happiness and distress, one after another, for all created beings in accord with their destiny. Where will you go to avoid your fate? Be peaceful here. Having duly mourned for your husband, you will soon enjoy much delight under Sugriva's protection, as you did with Vali. Your son will become Prince Regent, and you will be honored. All of this is ordained by Providence. O Tara, the wives of heroes never lament, as you are doing now. Ram instructed Tara according to the moral codes which applied to her race. On the death of her husband, she should accept her brother as her spouse and serve him as she had served Vali. Tara became silent, gazing at Ram, who now turned to Sugriva to comfort him. Ram told Sugriva to take heart and attend to Vali's funeral. The soul of the monkey king would not be helped by simply grieving for him. The time for grieving must soon end, and duties must be performed. Ram said gravely, time controls everything. Bali has succumbed to all-powerful time, going to the regions he has earned by his own acts. Now time is urging you to perform your religious duties towards your brother. Okay, page. Yeah. Sugriva stood, looking at Ram. His mind was bewildered with grief and remorse. Lakshman took hold of the monkey's arm and told him to proceed with Vali's cremation. Lakshman gave detailed instructions to the confused Sugriva. Hearing the prince speak, Sugriva's attendants ran to carry out his orders. Ram again spoke to the grieving Tara. O Vanara queen, carefully consider whether or not this dead body of Vali was ever related to you. It is nothing but a collection of inert chemicals. The real person is the soul, not the body. In ignorance only do we form relationships based upon bodily considerations, calling others husband, son, and friend. Ram explained that the soul is without designations. It is eternal and dwells for only a short time in the body. During our brief sojourn in our bodies, we form so many illusory relationships, but all of these will undoubtedly be broken by the force of time. The soul's real happiness lies in its relationship with God. Vali had now moved closer to that eternal relationship with no one, and no one need lament for him. As Ram spoke, Vali's grieving relatives felt relief. Gathering themselves together, they prepared for Vali's funeral. A beautiful wooden palanquin was fetched. Vali's body was carefully laid on it, and it was lifted up by 8 powerful monkeys. Vali looked like a fallen god. The palanquin was adorned by numerous carvings of birds, trees, and fighting soldiers. Over its top was lattice work covered with a net and many garlands and jeweled ornaments. The sides of the palanquin were dabbed with red sandal paste, and lotus flowers were laid out all along its edges. Sugriva and Angada bore the palanquin along with the other monkeys. Sugriva had regained his composure and issued orders to the monkeys. Walk ahead of us, scattering the ground with jewels of every description. Let learned monkeys recite the scriptures, and we shall proceed slowly to the cremation ground. The procession moved off, heading toward the riverbank. A great wail was sent up by many females who walked in front. Gradually they came to the river, and a funeral pyre was built on its bank. The palanquin was set down next to the pyre, and Tara again fell on the ground, crying mournfully, "Oh, hero, why do you not cast your glance upon me today, seeing here your wives all weeping, who have trodden the long path behind you? Here are your ministers sunk in a sea of dejection. O Vali, dismiss your counselors now, as you did in the past. Then we shall sport together, intoxicated with love." The other women gently raised Tara, who was overwhelmed with sorrow. With the help of Sugriva and the weeping Angada, they lifted Vali's body onto the pyre. Angada then lit the pyre and walked around his father, who had set out on his journey to the next world. All the others joined him in slowly circumambulating the blazing pyre. Everyone then entered the river and offered sacred water to Vali's soul. After the obsequies, rituals, were observed, Sugriva and his counselors surrounded Ram and Lakshman. Hanuman, who resembled the golden peak of Mount Meru, folded his hands and said to Ram, "By your grace, O Raghava, has Sugriva acquired the ancestral kingdom of the Vanaras. Please enter the city of Kishkinda in state, and with your permission, we will perform the coronation ceremony." Ram looked stern as he replied, "Commanded by my father, I shall not enter a village for 14 years, much less a city. You may proceed into the city and duly install Sugriva as your king. I shall remain outside, finding some suitable cave for my residence." Ram instructed Sugriva to remain in Kishkinda for the coming few months. It was the beginning of the monsoon season, so it would be impossible to search for Sita. When the rains ended, Sugriva should dispatch the monkeys in all directions to look for Ravana and the princess. Last paragraph. Sugriva took leave of Ram. I've been reading fast because it's a long chapter, and I knew it was a long chapter. I hope you don't mind. I was just reading very fast. Okay. Sugriva took leave of Ram and went into his city, which was situated within a vast mountain cave. Did you know that? Kishkinda was in a vast mountain cave. In accordance with scriptural injunctions, a grand coronation ceremony was performed. Everyone repeatedly extolled Ram and Lakshman, feeling honored by the friendship of the two princes from Ayodhya. Sugriva was reunited with his wife Ruma, and he entered Vali's magnificent palace. Awaiting the end of the rainy season, he lived happily, surrounded by his wives and ministers. So we're going to have a full day's break with Ramayana because other topics tomorrow. Something nice remembering. The Itihasas and the Puranas are both histories, but they're different than ordinary histories. I mean, the form of the Itihasa is chronological. The form of the Puranas is ideological, not necessarily chronological. But they're parts of the Vedas, and they're eternal. We discussed this in the class yesterday morning. There's a verse in the sixth canto of the Bhagavatam, where it says that there's two forms that the Lord takes: his para Brahman form and his Shabda Brahman form. So his form as the Lord, whatever that feature, in this case Ram, and then there's the Shabda Brahman form. Those are both, the verse says, Vishnu speaking, these are my two eternal forms. So the Itihasa is an eternal form. The sound vibration glorifying the Supreme Lord is not different than the Supreme Lord. It's an eternal form. And so the writing of Ramayana by Valmiki wasn't fiction, wasn't creative writing, it wasn't mythology, it wasn't imagination. It was manifesting that which is eternal through his service. And he was qualified and he was empowered and so on. But it's not just a history. I mean, let's say There are such things as histories. Supposing somebody wanted to be, for whatever the reason, a historian about somebody or something, the India-Pakistan conflict, and write the history. So they can have a history, or the history of Mahatma Gandhi or something, the history of somebody or something. And that's worldly. It comes and goes. But the Itihasa is a different kind of, it's not that kind of history. It's Shabda Brahman. And the nature of Shabda Brahman is, besides it's not different than Para Brahman, it serves to elevate. We were hearing that, we were discussing that today. The lower modes of nature, ignorance and passion, are minimized, and the awakening of goodness and then pure goodness comes just from hearing Shabda Brahman. The practical effect is different. It's an observable, visible, phenomena in this world. So what we're doing, just hearing, of course, it's a rewrite of Valmiki Ramayana with some modifications here and there, but it's of that same nature. Besides interesting to understand some details, whether we understand the details or not, we just like your two children, whether they're understanding everything or not, the sound vibration is elevating. It's like hearing kirtan. People, like Prabhupada would say about kirtan, people may understand, they may not understand. I mean, I don't know what exactly there is to understand about kirtan, but they may understand, they may not understand. But it's purifying for the chanter and for the hearer and for any living entity. Higher consciousness, of course, is benefited further, but the sound vibration is elevating, Shabda Brahman, and that's Ramayana. So it's been nice every evening just reading from like this. See if there's some discussion, because we have our Bhagavatam installation still.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. So, I think in the whole chapter, I think a couple of times it was mentioned about the scriptural injunctions.
About which?
Scriptural injunctions, that's what is said in scripture. For example, like Lord Rama says that why you are being killed because of the sins you have, and as per scriptures, that's how it should be. And I think one time I also
Could you take the mask? It's muffled. Yeah.
one time I also heard that uh, Manu Samhita's reference was also given when in the chapter. So Manu Samhita is also considered a part of Vedas, or
Yes.
is
Yes. It's eternal. It's delivered by Manu, but it's eternal. It's from the Supreme Lord. That's the eternality of it, and it's delivered by Manu, but it's eternal.
okay?
Okay.
All right.
Has the same weight. No, it's appropriate according to different yugas or different time and circumstance. How it's applied is different, but the principle doesn't change.
I never read but I learned that we still have access to Manu Samhita verses, right, Manoj?
You're questioning again, is Manu Samhita part of the Vedas? That's your question again.
That is clear.
That's the essence of your question.
Yeah, it is clear. But the next part, do we have access to the Manu Samhita verses, all the verses? What
You want to know, is there somewhere to read the Manu Samhita? That's your question?
Yeah, right, Manoj.
It's not a popular literature.
Yeah.
Is it available? Probably. There are probably scholars who would say, "Oh, that's not from the Manu Samhita," and It's not preserved. It's not agreed upon what's Manu Samhita. There are verses from it that are referred to by our acharyas, but I don't know any detail about, is there a document? Can you go to a bookstore and buy Manu Samhita?
Because I think I read in Chanakya book by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, and I think that it was mentioned some similarity with the like Manu Samhita also mentioned that. So that's that, but I was not sure of any source where you could kind of access that.
You're asking the same question again. Is there some way to go to get a copy of Manu Samhita? Is your question? Is that your question?
Yeah,
And I don't know.
It's not,
I don't know of any source. There may be some library that has something. It's not a published book, so don't ask the same question again, because it's the same answer.
Okay, right.
It's a text that did exist, and in what form it exists today, I don't know. But if you know some scholarly, I can ask some scholarly devotees. It'll take a few days to get an answer, but I can ask. Is there such a thing as a text? There's a devotee that wants to know, where would he go to find the text? But you and I have certainly run across references to Manu Samhita.
Right.
So it exists somewhere, in some form. Probably among scholars disagreeing what is this or that Manu Samhita. You know how scholars are.
And it was not compiled by Vedavyas.
I don't know. I don't know. Why don't you do some research and send me what you come up with, and I'll forward that what you come up with to some scholars and see what the scholars say. Okay?
Okay.
If that's something you're really interested in.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking when I was reading Chanakya book at that time, I was
Okay,
thinking
so
about
you
that.
do some research. You don't have to write a thesis or something. Just something that you find that seems, reasonable.
Sure.
And I'll probably get something like, these are scholarly people that really disagree with each other, and there's not any definitive answer about where Manu Samhita is, although it's a text. So the main question, I guess, is it something Vyasadeva wrote? How did it come to be in a written form?
Right.
That's really the question.
Yeah.
Where the text is going to be disagreement among scholars, guaranteed.
Right.
One of the advantages of Bhagavatam is there are texts that most scholars, it's available in its fullness, and most scholars agree this is it. And there are some versions that are very, very, what a word here and there difference in different versions, but it's a text that's largely not in question.
Yeah. Okay, right.
And guaranteed, Manu Samhita is not a text that there's some general acceptance. This is Manu Samhita. So the main question is, did Vyasadeva write it? And is there something out there that is more reliable than other somethings? I can ask those two questions without you doing any research.
Okay, thank you.
Madhava, you can send me that text that says, is there a reliable source for Manu Samhita that someone could look to? And was Vyasadeva the compiler of it?
Google Guru. It was written by Bhrigu. Bhrigu Muni.
Bhrigu.
And there is a PDF version of Sanskrit and English translation. That's the guy.
Which I'm sure scholars disagree. Its content. You can send me that link. Okay. Anything else? Compliments to you two kids. You sat there very patiently. There was a battle. We promised a battle. There was a battle. It wasn't too like gruesome, but it was a battle. Do you remember the names? The two that were fighting? One starts with a V. Vali.
Wali.
Vali. 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 And his brother starts with an S. Sugriva. 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 Sugriva and Vali. How about your daughter? You have a good memory? Or are you just too shy? I don't want to ask you. Okay.
Prabhu, so when after Wali's death, when they were carrying his body for the rituals, but before that, when Sri Ram was talking to Tara, he was also saying that do not grieve because it's the body and the soul is. So since we say it's not the body, it's the soul, why do we perform the rituals?
For the benefit of the soul, because there is a connection for the benefit of the soul, the passage of the soul to a higher place. The rituals are to release the soul from the affinity for the body and release the soul from sins that may have been committed while in that body and elevate the soul to a higher destination. Okay. Online? No?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Just a question about the monkeys. I guess are they? I mean, they seem to have know all the religious things, and they're doing all the rituals, and so are they considered animals? Because when Rama killed Wali, one of the reasons he said,
Yes. Well, I've been through this discussion. Like, what's a Vana, anyways? Are they this, or are they that, or are they other? Are they Are they animals? Are they higher beings, like some kind of extensions of the gods, or what? Are they obliged by the codes of the Vedas? I mean, they know Sanskrit and so forth and so on. So it's not really clear, but it seems that because there are sons of the gods, they have a higher existence than monkeys, but at the same time they have behaviors that are monkey-like. They have shape-changing powers. They have military powers. They have this and that powers. They have powers, so they're beyond mortals. They're beyond monkeys and they're beyond mortals. They're higher beings. At the same time, they identify themselves to a degree as being like monkeys. They have, it's a different category than monkeys, but they identify themselves like that. So it's not really black and white. It's not really a clear category. They're Vanaras. So monkey-like, but not monkeys. Celestial-like, but not celestials. Human-like, but not humans. They're Vanaras.
and they exist in the spiritual world also
No.
in their forms.
I don't know what exists in the spiritual world as far as the Vanaras are concerned. It would make sense, but I don't know. In other words, in Ayodhya and the spiritual world are there Vanaras?
Yeah, that's the question.
Likely, but don't know.
one more question.
Hmm.
Hanuman, so when he met Lord Rama, I mean, did he, I guess, immediately recognize based on his, I mean, I'm
Yes.
assuming that he appeared because to assist Lord Ramachandra in his
Yes.
pastimes.
Yes. He recognized immediately. Now remember that he's the son of Vayu, and then while he was still very little, he was cursed by the Brahmanas that he would not remember his powers, but he had a Vayu lineage, and he had blessings from the demigods in various ways. So he had, you could say, he had prior association, prior inclination, just in terms of the story itself. He's an eternal associate, so that's another factor. But so he was recognizing his eternal master for the first time in this. But the reasons that helped that was all those things that happened before. Okay, online. Let's go. Go ahead.
First question from Vamsidaridas. How or what makes it so hard that one thinks immortal despite it's very obvious? Context: reading from Ishopanishad and Srimad Bhagavatam and so on, that there is death or change of the body, but it looks not sinking into the heart, and so wondering how is it looking so hard as Yudhishthira is pointing.
Because of attachment. I mean, that we in the morning classes, we've been discussing for the past whatever month and a half, Uddhava Gita, and the message of Uddhava Gita, the first 3 chapters, is knowledge and detachment, because attachment is very strong. So why is it difficult? Because attachment is strong. We identify with the temporary, although we know better.
Next question from Sri Radhika Devi Dasi. What is the difference between Rama and Sugriva's relationship and the I scratch your back if you scratch my back kind of friendship in the material world?
Whose relationship, Rama and Sugriva? Well, 2 things. One of the, what, that there is some similarity in that, there, as was stated by Virata in his celestial form, that one of the best ways of overcoming a difficulty is 2 persons who are facing the same difficulty help one another and support one another. Thus, find Sugriva because he's in the same situation. So that's a political or a worldly consideration. It says you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back consideration. But the distinction is it's based on theism. The violation of Vali and the violation of Ravana went against moral codes or standards of codes of conduct, dharma. And so it was dealing with adharma together. Now there's the overlapping was some self-interest, one can say, from a material point of view. But the real essence is not just self-interest, the real essence is dharma. And then another distinction is this is the personality of Godhead. And it's not the same as I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's the personality of Godhead engaging Sugriva in service and friendship, a particular rasa, a rasa of friendship, in regaining Sita and all of that.
Second question from Sri Radhika Devi Dasi. I have heard that it was not that Lord Rama could not distinguish between the two brothers, for one was a king and one was in exile. But the real reason he did not protect Sugriva was to address his offense to Lakshman.
Yes.
If this is true, how to reconcile the fact that Lord Ram is always truthful with his statement to Sugriva? That is, that he did not protect him, for he could not distinguish the two brothers.
Well, maybe both are true. I don't know the best answer to that question, but maybe they're both true.
Next question is from Radha. When Tara was stopping Wali for not going to fight, was she not coming in between the plan of Lord Rama to kill Wali?
Yes, she was. But it also, it's just, it's part of the Lord's plan to have different truths spoken by persons other than himself. And Tara was speaking truth. And Vali, because of his temperament, was neglecting truth. So in that sense, she wasn't impeding the plan of the Lord, she was facilitating. But on the other hand, one could say she was impeding because if Ali hadn't gone, then the whole story wouldn't have happened.
Another question from Radha. How did Rama feel when Vali died?
How old are you? How many? 8. The person asking this question is 10. So you should be getting yourself ready to ask nice questions. You get it? And one of the reasons she's able to ask such nice questions is she reads Ramayana every night before she goes to bed. She really likes Ramayana. Okay, so ask the question again. I got distracted. Can you read the question again? What did Ram feel when Tara was sad?
How did Ram feel when Vali died?
Well, when Vali died, he knew that he had released him from the sin. He felt good about it. So it wasn't just like shaking his finger at him. It was what's cited is according to the law that governs kings, the punishment that goes for one who does this kind of sin is death penalty. So he was now released from sin and he could go to higher destinations. And if he had not done that, then he would have suffered terribly for that sin. The two sins. Next.
I read that question wrong. It was, how did Ruma, Sugriva's wife, feel when Vali died?
How did Ruma feel when Vali died? We'll have to ask Ruma. Send Ruma a text message and see what she says.
Next question from Atulya Devi Dasi. The pastime of killing Vali had Vali had Vali listened to Tara and not gone to fight, he would not have died.
Right.
It seems like in the pastime of the Lord, there are set choices and outcomes.
Yes.
How to understand this and what lessons to drive from this pastime?
Well, the flow of the pastimes is to teach us lessons, and that's how to understand it. When you receive wise advice and you neglect the wise advice, there's consequences, and it can be really bad. So best to not be impetuous And like with your blinders on, unable to hear wisdom when from those who are dear to you and are offering wisdom, better to listen to the wisdom. You can consider, left or right or go forward, but listen to wisdom. That's the lesson to be derived. And there's consequences if you don't.
Next question is from Barsana Devidasi.
Hmm.
Bali is being addressed as a monkey. How can the law of not cohabiting with another's wife apply to a monkey?
This is what started that question. What are the Vanaras anyways? Are they bound if they're monkeys, then they're not bound to laws of mankind. And if they're bound by laws of mankind, then are they monkeys? And it's in another category. They're in Vanaras. They are bound by the laws of mankind. But they're not mankind. They're Vanaras. So it's a little, it's not black and white. Exactly. They are bound by those laws. But there's another set of laws that apply to them also. Ram standing behind the tree or bush or whatever. According to the laws of mankind, one may do that. So, they're bound by some laws and not by others. It's not clear. They're Vanaras. Next.
Next question is from Sanchari. When you were reading, the text indicated that Tara believed Vali would be in the heavenly planets. My understanding is that this comes from a place of grief. However, this got me thinking about what was the belief system about the afterlife that was shared by those personalities who were not at all pious.
Who are not.
At all pious.
Well, he was pious in one sense because, like, for example, every day he would go bathe in the oceans and the four directions and sacred rivers. He observed certain things. But he's a Vanara. He's not human. He's not monkey. He's a Vanara. So the destination of the soul depends upon consciousness, and consciousness, there's factors that involve the degree to which consciousness is covered or freed. Her question is specifically with regard to followers of the Vedas. Read the question again, just so I'm addressing the question again.
When you were reading, the text indicated that Tara believed Vali would be in the heavenly planets. My understanding is that this comes from a place of grief. However, this got me thinking
Got her thinking
about what was the belief system about the afterlife that was shared by those personalities who were not at all pious.
who are not at all pious.
Mainly, did the wives of demons who died in battle believe their husbands went on to a better afterlife? Is there anything on what the demons themselves believed happened to them after they died?
I don't know what the demons believe happened to the wives of the demons when their husbands died, what they believed their destination was. It's if there's no atonement for sins, then it's a bad destination. In the case of Vali, because he was put to death purposely because of his the sin of cohabiting with his younger brother's wife, he was relieved of the sin. So it wasn't just in desperation. It may have been from her position in desperation or sentiment or high emotion, but Ram clarified.
A comment from Shrida Das. On one hand, Lord Rama could make ocean come to his lotus feet. On the other hand, he says he could not differentiate between Vali and Sugriva. As Kunti Mata says, this is really bewildering. Mata says that the Lord's actions are so bewildering.
Lord's actions are what?
Bewildering.
Bewildering. Yeah. He has his purposes. And I'm still thinking about Sri Radhika's question, that he's perfectly honest. And if the reason was he couldn't tell the distinction between the two of us, is what he said, but the real reason was he had not properly respected Lakshman, then he wasn't speaking the truth. So, and again, it could be both reasons. He's not speaking both reasons. He's speaking one of them. Okay. Yeah, it was just he was expressing some. It's bewildering. It takes pure consciousness to get unbewildered, and even then, we can't understand everything.
Next question from Snehavali Devidasi. We previously heard that Krishna is the reservoir of all the rasas. Rasovai Saha. We also heard that Lord Rama is the predominating deity of the secondary rasa, sorrow.
Karuna rasa, Snehavali, Karuna rasa. Go ahead.
My question is if Krishna is the predominating deity of all the rasas or just one particular rasa like Lord Ram.
Well, Krishna is the reservoir of all rasas. That in the list, you can go. Snehavali, you have access to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because I sent you, a folio. You can search in that section, and you'll find each of the rasas have their predominating deity. Krishna is the source of them all. He's not the predominating deity. He is the source of them all. And send me a little text message, Snehavali, and I'll send you the research I did on that topic. But you have it in your Sri Computer G in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That's it. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Is your daughter shy, or can I ask her a question?
You can definitely ask.
Okay.
Response or not.
Well, it's just a kid's question. The Vali had a wife, and Vali's wife's name was. She's a celebrated personality in Ramayana. Vali's wife was. Do you remember? Tara. Very good. Very good. Very good. In time, just hearing these personalities again and again and again, it becomes like it's at your fingertips. Just part of what you live with, because they're all connected. When you hear Ram, you start to immediately think of Sita Ram and Hanuman, and you think of all those personalities, and then there's more personalities and more personalities. But Tara is a very important personality. She's a celebrated personality, very chaste. Amongst chaste wives, she's one of them. Very celebrated personality. And very wise. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.